Good evening, everyone. I'm Ankit and you're watching the Indian Express analysis, which goes live every day at 4 p.m. on StudyIQ IS English channel. Today is 21st of April, and we are going to discuss important news and articles which we have picked up from Indian Express newspaper. Now, the number of articles, although might be less, but the amount of discussion will be quite large. So, we'll start off our today's discussion by understanding the government's new initiative to increase the value addition in the electronics manufacturing sector. And now, why is government wanting to increase value addition? Because naturally India is now one of the major manufacturers of mobile phone. But this manufacturing activity that happens in India is mostly assembly of mobile phones, right? So what we do is that we import important components that are required to manufacture mobile phones. We assemble them in India and export the final product to other countries in addition to selling them in India also. So now the government wants to increase the value addition. That is, rather than importing other components from other countries, why don't we manufacture them in India? So this is what is today's discussion about. What are the schemes government has brought in this regard? We'll try to understand this, and overall this deals with the manufacturing sector, hence it is important from GS paper 3 syllabus. Then in the second article also we'll be understanding about softening of food inflation. Now, food inflation as a problem was something that was very big in last 1.5 years in India, and because of this also we saw the amount of inflation in India, which is estimated by consumer price index, that also was quite high. But as you can understand, in our recent discussions following the RBI's decision to cut the repo rate, we understood that the amount of inflation in the country has fallen down, and the major cause of this reduction in inflation is cooling down of food inflation. So we'll try to understand the reasons behind it, why actually the inflation was high, why now the inflation have cooled down, and what is expected to happen in the near future, right? So this kind of a discussion relating to inflation, relating to the aspects of food inflation, all of this is important from our prelims perspective. And also in the mains of the year 2024, we saw for the first time a question appeared in the mains examination on inflation. And can you guess the topic? It was also food inflation. So this was such a big problem that UPSC asked a question relating to inflation, which is usually a prelims related topic in the mains examination. So that is why we are also going to discuss this, another topic which is important from economy perspective, therefore GS paper 3 syllabus. In the third article, we'll be understanding the facts relating to import of crude oil and natural gas in India. As historically, we have understood India is a large importer of both crude oil and natural gas. But what are our historical figures, and how is import of crude oil and natural gas? Has it increased or has it reduced in the recent times? We'll try to understand this, and the factors behind why there is an need for import of crude oil. We'll also discuss this. Again, this is a economy related topic, particularly related to energy, therefore GS paper 3 is the relevant topic. So any day when the economy topic comes in the newspaper, I'm very happy. Now, not that I don't cover other topics also, I make sure to cover every topic. So sometimes you'll see that the polity articles will be dominated in the discussion, sometimes environmental related. Now today is the date where economy related articles are more in number. Then in the fourth article, we'll be understanding colossal squid. Why are we dealing with colossal squid? Because recently researchers have found a photographic and videographic evidence of existence of colossal squid, which right now, until now, it wasn't available. So that is why this is a big development. Now, as colossal squid was not seen in live, so therefore scientists and researchers, they had a very less idea about it. What kind of an animal is this? What is its behavioral patterns? Where is it found? What are its mating ritual, etc. All of this that the researchers have an idea about other animals, this was not available as far as colossal squid is concerned. So therefore we are going to discuss why is this finding significant and what will result out of this finding. Then in the last article, we'll be discussing the inclusion of Bhagavad Gita as well as Natya Shastra in the UNESCO's Memory of the World Register. Now these two literature or a piece of literature, they are very important, not just from religious but also from our India's cultural perspective. So their inclusion in such a global register, that is UNESCO's Memory of World Register, becomes significant from our prelims perspective. Now, is this the first inclusion ever in this particular register? This is not. Actually, this brings down the number of things that are registered in this particular registry to 12, right? So we'll discuss all of this. Last one is important from GS paper 1 perspective, that is the syllabus relating to art and culture, and the fourth article was important from science and tech perspective, right? So these are the articles that we are going to cover. Now, The notes for this session as usual will be available on my Telegram channel. The link to this Telegram channel is ATS Live, so you can either search it on the top right hand corner of a mobile app, or alternatively you can even scan the QR code which will take you directly to my to my Telegram channel. Now Blueberry, Geeta, Bhanu, Baga, Yashi, Sarang, Priyalata, Reshma, good evening to all of you. I hope you had a very great weekend. Now, let us start our today's discussion with this first article. This appeared on the economy page of the Indian Express newspaper, and it says how India is looking to deepen the local value addition in the electronics manufacturing, and this naturally is an economic related topic, so therefore the relevant paper is GS paper 3. Now, let us understand the context of our today's discussion. What you have to understand that after successfully being able to localize smartphone assembly in country for domestic consumption and some exports, the government is now shifting its focus. Now it wants to increase the local value addition in the manufacturing of electronics. Now why is this initiative so successful? Because you'll find major mobile manufacturers like Oppo, like Vivo, like Xiaomi, like Nothing, like Apple, like Samsung, all of them have their factories in India, and not just they are catering to domestic demand, but they are also exporting mobile phones. For example, on Twitter, if you're there, you'll find that users located in US, in UK, they have found that the iPhones that are available in US and UK, they are now being made in India. So this is a huge achievement. But if you look at this issue closely, you'll find that most of these mobile phones, they are not altogether manufactured in India. What rather happens is that most of the raw material like PCBs, like semiconductors, they are imported from other countries like Taiwan, like China, like South Korea, and then they are assembled in India, and the final mobile phone is then exported to other countries. So now the government wants to reduce our import dependence on these components and want to manufacture them in India itself, right? Now, the result of this initiative of the government is now government is looking to create each and every component relating to electronics manufacturing in India. For example, semiconductors, I understand India's dependence on semiconductor for imports is quite high. We need to import semiconductors from countries like Taiwan, from countries like China, from countries like South Korea. So as to increase our production of semiconductors in India, government came up with a scheme known as India Semiconductor Mission, where 76,000 crore rupees has been earmarked to offer incentives to companies so that they set up their own manufacturing units like fabrication units in India. Similarly, packaging of semiconductors, like making one big microchip and then embedding smaller microchips into them, this is called as packaging. All of this will happen into India. And also recently, in last month itself, government notified a 23,000 crore scheme for passive electronic components manufacturing. Again, many electronic components that are used in manufacturing of mobile phones like PCBs, like screens, etc., they'll now be manufactured in India, and for that government is looking to offer incentives to companies. Similarly, alongside with this, production linked incentive scheme for mobile phone assembly and laptop assembly is already present, which has paid government the rich dividends. As we have understand, India is now a major manufacturer of smartphones in the world, and also the government has now launched support for practically all layers of electronics manufacturing to make this sector crucial driver of the growth of Indian economy. Now, not just this reduces our dependence on imports, but it also provides huge amount of employment, which I'll tell you in our today's discussion how much amount of employment these schemes are providing in India. Now, what is the challenge that the government faced when it comes to electronics component manufacturing? First, as I already told you, it is quite natural that India faces a huge import dependency. Now, India is the large importer of crude oil, which we will understand in our today's discussion also, that on an average, from every year, India imports about 85% of its total crude oil requirements. Similarly, electronic imports is the second largest component after crude oil when it comes to imports, as India imports about 75% of total India's electronic production, and therefore when 3/4 of our production is dependent on imports, you can understand the amount of imports is quite high, second only to crude oil. Now, there also exists a demand and supply gap in electronic components. Now, demand for this electronic components is quite huge. As you can understand, electronics in general is in huge demand, and we have to manufacture them, we need components. Rather than that, when the demand is so high, is our supply able to fill that gap? The answer is no. Because current domestic production of electronic components is only $10.75 billion, whereas consumption of domestic electronic components is nearly $100 billion. So this gap is quite huge, about 10 times the demand and supply gap. Similarly, export demand is increasing day by day. So the export demand for electronic components is $140 billion. So if we increase this domestic production of electronics, we'll not just be able to cater to domestic demand, but we'll also be able to fulfill international demand, right? So this is the rationale behind it. Similarly, there is lack of domestic scale when India's current capacity is only 10% of total electronics production. So when it comes to electronics production, 90% of the total components, they need to be imported. Similarly, the sector has high investment to turnover ratio. See, whenever you are a business, you would want to gain maximum out of your investment, right? So naturally, you'll invest wherever you are expected to make maximum amount of profit. So in smartphone production, particularly assembly, whenever you invest 1 rupee, you will be able to generate 20 rupees in revenue. But on the other hand, when you invest in manufacturing of electronic component, for every 1 rupee that you invest, you will be only be able to make 2 to 4 rupees. So where would you invest if you're a business? Naturally in smartphone manufacturing, that is smartphone assembly, because it is allowing you to have much more revenue, therefore larger profit. So that is the problem why electronics manufacturing and components manufacturing in India is not happening. Now government is looking to change this. Recently, in last month itself, government notified a scheme of more than 22,000 crore rupees incentives will be offered for manufacturing of electronic components, which is expected to take the baton of earlier PLI schemes forward. Now what happened in earlier PLI schemes? I told you, we set up mobile phone manufacturing units, but these were assembly units. But now we require components also which need to be manufactured in India. So therefore, this scheme has been brought. Now what this scheme does is that it will be available, or the benefits of the scheme will be available for next 6 years, and the government is targeting the localized manufacturing of components, and this scheme is expected to generate production with the tune of 4.56 lakh crore and will bring an incremental investment of more than 59,000 crore. So this is what government wants to do with this scheme. Now another features of this scheme is that it targets the manufacturing of those components which are very much in demand when it comes to manufacturing of mobile phones. For example, display modules like the screens of mobile phones that you see right now, we have to import them from South Korea. Similarly, sub-assembly camera modules, we need to import them from China. Also printed circuit board assemblies, the PCB circuits over which the other microchips are embedded. This is essential for mobile phone. Now we have to import them from China. Similarly, lithium cell enclosures, very much important when you have to power your mobile phones. Resistors, capacitors, smaller components, all of this will be now manufactured in India with this scheme itself. Now the scheme wants to create a direct employment of more than 91,600 jobs over 6 years. So not just it will reduce our import dependency, but it will also generate employment. How much employment? More than 91,000 crore. Now another factor is that it will help us increase the part of local value addition. Now I have told you, with this assembly of mobile phones in India, major mobile phone manufacturers like Apple, like Samsung, they've set up their mobile phone factories in India. But the fact is, the amount of value addition that India does is only about 15 to 20%. Now the government wants to double it. How much? It wants to achieve at least 30 to 40% of value addition in mobile phones. What is value addition? Suppose if I'm importing 100 rupees worth of component and I'm manufacturing it, and if I sell the mobile phone for about 115 to 120 rupees, so that means I'm adding the value of about 15 to 20% from the imports. So government wants to increase this to double the amount, that is from 30 to 40%. Okay. Similarly, other features of the scheme, that the incentives will be offered in 3 different types. First incentive will be operational incentive, where this will be based on net incremental sales, similarly to the PLI module. So suppose if any company who have registered with the scheme, earlier they were manufacturing 1 lakh screens, okay. But now after registering under the scheme, now it increases its production to 3 lakh screens, okay. So the benefit which will be available to this company will be the amount it has added after being registered to the scheme, that is for 2 lakh screens only the incentives will be offered. So this is what incremental incentive is. Similarly, capital expenditure amount will also be considered when the giving of incentives is calculated. For example, if any factory has invested 1,000 crore rupees to set up a new manufacturing unit, so this 1,000 crore rupees worth of capital investment that the company does after registering with the scheme, then the incentive will be available on this amount. Also, a hybrid model will be considered, that is a combination of both incremental sales and the capital expenditures will also be calculated to give out these schemes to the companies. Okay. Now, the key features of this scheme also, that which companies will be eligible. Now, both greenfield and brownfield investments are eligible. Greenfield investment means the company does not have a factory. It needs to start a new factory to manufacture electronic components. The incentives will be offered to them also, and if the company increases or wants to increase the capacity of its existing factory, those brownfield investments will also be considered, and a foreign company will also can participate in the scheme to get benefits. They have to first transfer their technology to an Indian company or form a joint venture with a domestic firm, and we'll see this kind of joint manufacturing or joint venture happens, that a foreign manufacturer or a foreign mobile phone manufacturer ties up with an Indian company like Dixon. They set up their mobile units and then manufacture those mobiles in India. Okay, so this is what this scheme is all about. Now, there are some newer comments also. Ashish, hi, good evening, sir. Sir, I'm in IIT Kharagpur, confused whether to continue preparation or not. Well, I'll suggest first of all complete your engineering, then think about the preparation, because engineering also requires you to study full time. Similarly, preparation also requires you to study full time. If you're doing your preparation right now, you won't be doing engineering properly, neither you will be doing the preparation properly. Good evening, Sheetal. Now, wait a minute. Let me set this one up. Okay. Now the smartphone PLI scheme has been one of the most successful scheme when it comes to overall production linked incentive scheme. Now the smartphone scheme, which started in 2020, it has led to cumulative investment of more than 10,000 crore rupees. The production value of mobile phones that has happened after the scheme has risen for more than 7.3 lakh crore rupees, and the amount of mobile phones that we have exported, that amounts to 3.9 lakh crore rupees. So this is the benefit of this scheme. This is the total production and this is the total value of exports. Similarly, it has created jobs very close to 1.4 lakh people. So you understand the amount of jobs it has created. Similarly, there was this IT scheme for PLI, which means assembly of laptops in India. Earlier, the scheme did not face very much interest, but government changed the features of the scheme and it resulted into much more increased interest. Now, this has created a cumulative investment of more than 500 crore rupees and direct employment of more than 5,000 people has happened, and the total amount of production that has happened is more than 10.3 thousand crore rupees. Okay, so this is the benefit that these schemes have given to India in terms of job creation, more than 1.39 lakh people here and more than 5,000 people here. Now, what's next for this scheme? Now, government is looking to change the next phase of PLI scheme. What changes it is expected to make? I told you already. The earlier the incentives under the scheme for the companies who have registered under the scheme, the incentives were available on incremental sales. For example, if you are selling 3 lakh mobile phones earlier, now after registering the schemes, you are selling 5 lakh mobile phones every year. So the benefits to the companies will be available for the only 2 lakh additional mobiles that it is manufacturing after registering the scheme. Now the government is also looking to change how the incentive should be given. Now the government will also consider the factors like domestic value addition and also the amount of incremental exports that is happening to calculate incentives, and then these kind of incentives will be given. So that is why the orientation of the government has now changed. Now, since it has become a major assembler of mobile phones, now government wants to increase local value addition. So this was the crux of our today's discussion. Now let's see if you are able to solve these questions. Answer quickly. See, the scheme aims to increase the local validation in electronics manufacturing from currently 15 to 20% to at least 75%. This is incorrect. It wants to double it to 30 to 40%. Both greenfield, brownfield investments are eligible, correct? Foreign companies can participate. only by transferring of technology to an Indian firm. This is incorrect. They can participate by transferring of technology, plus they can also form joint venture with Indian companies. So only 2 is right, first and third are incorrect. Therefore, option B is the right answer. Baga, Sarang, Yashi, Bhanu, Priyalatta, Geeta, correct. Reshma, please reread the question again. Do not worry if you have gotten this wrong, no problem. Now the next discussion, actually I've borrowed 2 articles for this discussion. Both the content of both these articles are actually the same, roughly the same, not exactly the same. So what we'll be doing is understanding both these articles in just our today's discussion. I've borrowed these articles from page 13 and 14, and these are relevant from GS paper 3 economy, because naturally you can see why food inflation is softening. So matters relating to increase in prices, its implication on economy, all of this is important from our prelims perspective. Now the context of this article is that because of increase in agricultural production plus a forecast of above normal monsoon this year, which we have already covered, it is expected to further reduce the prices in food prices, right? So this is what is termed as cooling down of food inflation. Now you can see the problem of food inflation in recent years. As you can see from this graph, India's food inflation, it spiked to many high percentage, and this overall increased the prices of food in India. And when prices of food increased, it overall increased the consumer price index, which calculates the overall levels of retail inflation in India. Similarly, from CPI, we also get what is known as consumer food price index. So what is consumer food price index? How is it different from consumer price index? We'll look in our today's discussion. Okay. Now the background of this discussion is that this article says that agriculture plays a very important role in our economy. Although in recent times the share of agriculture in our GDP, in our employment is reducing, but still even today it is quite significant. Particularly when it comes to contribution to our GDP, agriculture contributes how much to our GDP? It contributes around 16% to our GDP. And when it comes to employment, agriculture contributes 46% to our total employment. Earlier, it had went down to about 40 to 43%, but after COVID-19 pandemic, we saw more and more people, they lost their jobs and they started doing agriculture. So that is why the share of agriculture currently, it lies down at around 46% of our total employment. Now, this agricultural sector has seen increased resilience over the years, especially during the COVID pandemic and after that. During COVID-19 pandemic, whenever lockdown was imposed, we saw agriculture was exempted from it. Why? Because India can be put in lockdown, but we also need to keep people well fed, right? So how do you keep people well fed? By providing them with food. And where does food come from? From agriculture. So agriculture sector annual growth has remained consistently above 4%. 4% growth for agriculture is good. Although it was less in 23-24, it was around 2.7%, except this financial year, every year the growth has remained around 4%, which is good when it comes to agriculture in India. Why was this less in this particular year? We'll deal with it, no problem. So when it comes to trend, if a question comes that agriculture sector's annual growth has remained 4% or above 4% since COVID-19 pandemic, the answer would be incorrect because it has reduced one particular year, okay? Now, the background, I told you, right, the agricultural growth was less in this year. Why was it less? Let us try to find this one out. Now, the last El Nino which happened in India was around April 2023 to May 2024. And as we have understood from our previous discussion, El Nino, whenever it happens, it leads to less amount of monsoon in India. And when less amount of monsoon happens, you can understand it overall affects the agriculture negatively. Now, what is El Nino? Quite briefly, it is the sea surface temperature that happens over Pacific Ocean. So, if the sea surface temperature of Pacific Ocean is above normal, above 0.5% more than normal, then we categorize that year as an El Nino year. So, what happened in 2023 to 24, that the sea surface temperatures of Pacific Ocean, it rose up to 2 degrees centigrade. So, to classify any year as El Nino, I told you, we require at least 0.5 degree centigrade increase in temperatures of sea surface temperature. It was 4 times than that, right? So because of that, the amount of El Nino was quite intense and also the duration of El Nino was quite high. So because of this intense and larger duration of El Nino, we saw that the large parts of India did not get adequate rainfall during this particular season. Not just monsoon season, but also after that and also in the winter season. And the result of this is that it led to delay in the onset of winter, and whenever winter happened also, the temperatures were warmer than usual. And naturally, when the amount of climatic conditions were not opportune for agricultural production, you'll understand that the overall yield of agriculture in that financial year, it reduced. So you'll see that India had a very subpar Kharif season in that year, similarly Rabi season, which leads to manufacturing of crops like wheat. The overall climatic conditions were not opportune, and as a result, when the yield of agricultural sector fall down, it led to reduction in the supply of food grains in India. And we understand whenever there is a supply crunch of any commodity, it leads to increase in prices. Understand? So therefore, due to this, the consumer food price index, which actually estimates the amount of food inflation in India, it averaged over 8.5% between July 2023 to December 2024, which made it one of the country's longest episodes of food inflation in recent times. Now, I don't remember exactly, but in last date, when we were discussing about consumer price index, someone of you commented that, can we rely on government's data? Is it actually correct? The answer is yes. You know why is that data correct? Because more than you, the government depends on the amount of inflation. If the inflation is too high, people will get angry and they will vote that government out. So it is more important for the government to control food inflation because it affects overall people in the country, and also it can lead to political negative outcomes for the existing government. So that is why when such food price index was quite high, this led to the problems, and now the government has decided to reduce the food inflation. How the food inflation will reduce, we'll understand this. But first, let us understand how is consumer food price index different than consumer price index. Okay. Now, from this table, you can understand this is the respective weightage of commodities that we use to calculate when we are calculating consumer price index. So you'll see from here, food and beverage has the highest weightage in the consumer price index, that is 45.86%. And why does food and beverage has the highest weightage when we are to calculate CPI? Because naturally, you eat food every day, not just every day, more than 2 to 3 times every day. But do you purchase clothes every day? The answer is no. Do you purchase house every day, or do you pay rent every day? The answer is no. Similarly, do you pay for education, healthcare every day? The answer is no. So whenever people who is going to market, the more likely is that they will buy food and beverage, because this is something you require on a daily basis. So naturally, the amount of weightage for food and beverage is high when it comes to CPI. So when compared to WPI, the weightage of food is higher in CPI as compared to WPI. Please remember this. Now, does food inflation means the inflation in this category? The answer is no. Because to calculate consumer food price index, we rely on different factors. Now, CFPI, which is consumer food price index, it is also calculated by National Statistical Office of MOSPI like CPI. But what is different as compared to CPI is that consumer food price index includes the cereal, meat, fish, egg, milk, oats, etc. But what it doesn't include is non-alcoholic beverages, prepared meals, sweets, snacks, pan, tobacco and intoxicants. So these items, these are eliminated from these food and beverage, from pan, tobacco, intoxicants, etc. to calculate consumer food price index, right? So please remember this. This is very important. This you need not utilize to calculate consumer food price index. Okay. Now, what will be the impact of food inflation, or how does food inflation affect you? Now, naturally, suppose you are making 10,000 rupees every month. So naturally, whenever the prices of food is high, the more amount of money you will be required to spend from that 10,000 rupees of your income on purchasing food item. And this impacts consumer spending. Why? Because more you are spending on food items, which means the less amount you have for other spendings. Naturally, so you'll cut down on your external spending like education, like healthcare, because food is more important. If you not live, how will you educate or how will you travel, right? So that is why when a house has to allocate a larger proportion of their incomes to food, they will be left with less amount of money to spend on other things, and this will reduce the overall consumer spending and the consumer spendings in the economy. And whenever the less demand for goods and services happen in economy, it leads to slowdown in the economic growth. So this is the impact of how food inflation not just impacts your disposable income, but it can lead to lower economic growth in India also. So therefore, it is in best interest of the government to control food inflation. Now, what is expected agricultural production that is going to happen in last financial year and how it is going to happen in this financial year. Now, agricultural production, it recovered in the next financial year of 2023-24, which is 24-25. And this was because of good monsoon that happened due to mild La Nina and no El Nino or other weather related shocks. Now, the good news is that this year also wheat crop in central India, that is particularly in states like Madhya Pradesh, which is one of the largest producer of wheat in India, it is going to be quite bumper this time, and this is due to no major temperature anomalies or existence of fog and smoke conditions. Similarly, yields in northern and northwest India like states of West UP, states of Haryana, states of Punjab, which are major producers of wheat in India, they are also reported to be marginally lower only last year. Last year it was quite high, but should still be up and higher overall and as compared to the national production figure, right? So going forward, it is expected that the wheat yields will be quite high. And now, as per the second advanced estimate, which is given by the government, both Kharif and Rabi crop, the output of these crops is expected to rise by almost 7 to 3% respectively. And among cereals, Kharif rice production is projected to grow by 6%, whereas wheat output is expected to grow to a record of more than 1,154 lakh tons. So therefore, it is expected that this year and also in the last year, the overall bumper production will happen, and this will lead to cooling down of food inflation in India, because with increase in production, the supply of food grains increase, and we understand whenever supply increases, the price cool downs. Okay. Now, future outlook, as I told you that IMD has estimated that this year monsoon will be above normal, which means about 105% of the long period average. Last year it was 108% of long period average. Both of these means above normal monsoon. And also IMD expects that El Nino southern oscillation, it will be neutral, which means it is going to be good for Indian rainfall. Well, yes, first is UP, but Haryana, Punjab, Madhya Pradesh, these are major manufacturers of the wheat. Now, what will be the future outlook? This article also highlights that viewed along with falling global oil production, as you can see, the value of prices of oil has also cooled down, which is highlighted by a reduction in the prices of Brent, benchmark of crude oil, and weakening dollar. It is expected that it will create a positive term of trade shock. What is terms of trade shock? So whenever you are going to import some amount of commodity, and if the prices of that commodity increase or the value of your currency depreciates, it means you have to spend more amount of money to import certain amount of commodities. So suppose if the prices of crude increase and if the value of rupee depreciates, which means your overall import bill will be quite high. Okay, but the opposite is happening, that is prices of crude oil is reducing and the value of rupee is appreciating as compared to dollar. So overall it will cool down our import bill, and also will be required to import less amount of food because now our food production is quite high. So when all three of this happen, it will lead to lesser amount of money which will be outgone for imports, for households, for businesses, for government, and this is expected to overall boost the house consumption. Why household consumption will be boosted? Because naturally when you're spending less amount of money on food, so you'll be having more money to spend on other items like leisure. Okay. Now, it also gives a very important indicator that whenever the amount of rainfall is good, it leads to growth in agricultural sector, and whenever there is a growth in agricultural sector, it leads to higher rural demand. And how do we estimate rural demand? There are few indicators that we use to do that. For example, pick up in sales of FMCG goods, that is fast moving consumer goods, whenever they increase, we see that the rural demand is high. Similarly, rise in the sale of fertilizers and tractors and also two-wheelers, these are estimated to calculate rural demand, and we see whenever these indicators are increasing, which means the rural demand is picking up. Similarly, urban demand is estimated by what? It is estimated by selling of four-wheelers, it is estimated by electronics payment data. So whenever they rise, which means urban demand is going up, and whenever they fall, it means that urban demand is going down. Similarly, to estimate rural demand, there is also an important indicator, that is demand for work that happens under Manrega scheme. So whenever there is a reduction in the demand of Manrega scheme, you understand people in rural areas won't want to work as labor favor because they have other job opportunities. So it means that rural demand is picking up. But whenever there is rise, somewhat slow rise in the demand of Manrega, you can't say for sure that there is a rural slowdown, because we saw during COVID-19 pandemic what happened, that people lost their jobs in urban areas. So people who did not have rural activity to look forward to, they registered themselves as a worker under Manrega. But however, in recent times, the peak that happened during COVID-19 pandemic has reduced because of growth in rural demand. Understand? Any doubts? If you don't have any doubt, let's see if you are able to solve this question. Well, people who are watching this session on mobile phone, did you get notification today of this session? Bhanu B, Baga A, Sarang B. So let's see who is right. Well, the beauty of economics is that it is dynamic. If you do not follow the current affairs for 1 month, you will be blind about what is happening in the country. Food and beverage has the highest weightage in consumer food price index. This is correct. I told you it has weightage of more than 45%, right? Now the weightage of food in wholesale price index is higher than in CPI. Now it is incorrect. Why? Because whenever we are calculating CPI, which highlights retail inflation, so the propensity of people like you and I to buy food products is more because we eat food more than once every day, right? But similarly, when we calculate wholesale price index, now the amount of spending that the wholesale level people make on food items, that is somewhat less than 30%, around 28-29%. So therefore, weightage of food in WPI is less than weightage of food in CPI. So second statement is incorrect. Consumer food price index shows inflation in every food item covered in CPI. This is also incorrect. I told you packed meals, etc. These are included. All even non-alcoholic beverages are excluded. So second and third incorrect. Only one is right. Therefore option A is the right answer. Only Amar, Baga Springs have gotten it right. Rest all of you have gotten it wrong. Amar, no notification. Okay. Well, YouTube has a mind of its own. Sometimes it does send notifications, sometimes it doesn't. So you all are accustomed to the time 4 p.m. Okay. So even if the notification doesn't come, you automatically know we should go. The session must be live. Okay. So what happens is that the inflation is a very dynamic topic. So with the current affairs, what we can understand is the trend of inflation. But to understand the deeper impact of inflation, what we have to do is we have to attend foundation classes. Now, I take foundation classes for economy in our batches that are going on StudyIQ. Currently, the admissions are open for April morning batch, and the batch is starting from 21st of April. Now, you can take the diamond courses also, but currently there is an offer going on which is not present here. I forgot to attach that thumb. Actually, if you register for platinum courses right now, you'll be upgraded to diamond courses only until 22nd of April, that is tomorrow. Okay. So please do not forget to enroll for our courses. How to enroll for our courses? What are the benefits of diamond batch? This is the slide where you do to. And to enroll for our courses, what you need to do is go to our StudyIQ website, click on explore courses here. When you click on explore courses, there's a tile that comes up. Click on UPSC IAS English. Okay. So as soon as you click UPSC IAS English, there's a tile that offers you the P2I foundation batch for April morning batch. And I was telling you, you can buy a platinum plan right now and you'll be getting a free upgrade to diamond plan. What you have to do to buy a diamond plan, click on buy now. As soon as you click on buy now, please do not forget to use the code ATS Live if you have to get discounts even on this amount, right? So how to apply the code? Let me tell you. Click on add promo code. Here you have to enter coupon code. There the coupon code is ATS Live. So please enter that and click on apply. As soon as you click on apply, see the ATS Live. It is now applicable, and the discount offer is 7,000 rupees. So diamond course is available at 34,999. Platinum is 29,999. Now I'll tell you right now, until tomorrow, the best option for you is to get platinum course. You will be upgraded to diamond course for free up till tomorrow only. So please save your money, use to buy this course and get maximum discount only after applying the ATS Live. Also in the newspaper on the very front page, you'll see a news about Gandhi Sagar Wildlife Sanctuary, because yesterday the CM of Madhya Pradesh, he has released 2 cheetahs in the Gandhi Sagar Wildlife Sanctuary. Now last week only I've done a separate video on Gandhi Sagar Wildlife Sanctuary. What you need to do, go to our YouTube channel, the channel on which you're watching this session, click on videos. As soon as you go downwards somewhere here, you'll see Gandhi Sagar Wildlife Sanctuary. This is the video I'm talking about. So click on this video and watch details about Gandhi Sagar Wildlife Sanctuary. And this is an important topic. The chances of this particular topic appearing in prelims is very high. Okay, so please do not miss out on this topic. Now let us get back to our session. Now, since we have done Gandhi Sagar Wildlife Sanctuary only in last week, so I did not find it good to discuss it today. We had other important articles also. Now let us move to this next article. This article also appeared in the economy page, and it talks about rising energy demand in India and India's reliance on imports for oil and natural gas. So in this regard, let us try to understand this article. Now India's dependence on imported crude oil, it has grown in the last financial year, that is in 2024-25, and the gap between consumption and the domestic production of hydrocarbon, it has continued to widen. Now what is our conventional understanding? That when it comes to import of crude oil, we are dependent on imports for 85% of our domestic demand, right? This is for crude oil. Similarly for natural gas, our conventional understanding highlights that 45% of our natural gas comes from imports. So this is the conventional understanding, and in our today's discussion, we'll understand whether this has increased or decreased in the last financial year. Okay. Now, country's oil import dependency for the full financial year touched another record high, while the reliance on imported natural gas has risen to a 4-year high as per the latest data from the Petroleum Ministry. Right. So what is the latest data? Let us try to find that one out. Now, I told you about the conventional understanding, 85% of our imports for crude oil. Now, India's oil dependency for import in the last financial year that ended in March 2025, that is financial year of 24-25. In this financial year, India imported 88.2% of our total crude oil. So you understand, from our conventional understanding, now the total imports of crude oil in India has increased. So now onwards, you will quote India imports around 88% of its crude oil requirement. Okay. Another factor, our conventional understanding about imports of natural gas was how much? It was 45%. Now, India imported natural gas at 50.8% of its total requirement. So this has also increased from 45 to 50.8%. So now onwards, you will highlight that India imports how much crude oil, natural gas for its domestic demand? Almost 50 to 51%. Okay. So please remember to upgrade your facts. Now, how much amount of money is India spending to import these crude oil and natural gas, right? This is also important. See, India is spending $137 billion on importing crude oil and $15.2 billion on importing natural gas. So, sum total about $152 billion India spends every year on importing these crude oil. So, this much amount of dollars is going out of our country. So, this is also a big problem. Understand? Now, what is important from this discussion is that Petroleum Planning and Analysis Cell of the India's Oil Ministry is giving this data. So, now let's find some facts relating to what this body is all about. Now, Petroleum Planning and Analysis Cell is an attached office. It is not a statutory body. Please remember it. It is a part of which ministry? Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, and it provides the most authentic official source of data for you to analyze and also for the policy makers to analyze in the hydrocarbon sector. And it was established back in 2002, and the headquarters of this body is located in our city of New Delhi. Okay. Now, why is India witnessing an increase in energy demand? This is the biggest question, that our imports have only grown because our demand for crude oil and natural gas is increased. So, let us find out our reasons for increase in such energy demand. Now, India's energy demand is growing swiftly, resulting in rising imports of crude oil and natural gas, and this is fueled by many factors. First is, as India is growing economically, you need energy intensive industries, they are also growing. So, whenever energy intensive industries like power sector, like automobile sector, like metals of aluminium, iron ore, etc., all of this is developing, they're expanding their capacity, so naturally they'll be wanting more energy. So therefore, they source their energy from crude oil and natural gas. Similarly, as India's population is growing, vehicle sales are also increasing. Vehicle sales not just increase with population, but they also increase with aspirations. So who would want to travel in a much bigger and wider SUVs, right? Despite the fact India has a very large amount of crowd and congestion in urban areas, still you'll see that the demand of SUVs is increasing. So manufacturers who were making sedans before, now they are manufacturing SUVs. And when the increased vehicle sales happen, when more fuel guzzling SUVs are sold, so naturally your demand of fuel will also increase. Similarly, rapid expansion of aviation sector is happening. Government, especially the Prime Minister, has highlighted that even persons who are wearing Hawai Chappal, they should be able to travel in Hawai Yatra, which means aviation sector. So naturally the aviation sector is increasing. And when people have more money at their hands, who would want to travel with trains when they can reach to the destinations quicker with air, right? Similarly, growing consumption of petrochemicals is increasing, from your clothes, which is probably made by polyester, to everything. The use of these petrochemicals are used to manufacture many things, and therefore when the growing consumption of those commodities increase, the demands for petrochemical increase, and rising population is behind all of these factors. So you can add rising population anywhere. So this is the primary reason why we witness there is an increase in energy demand. Now, India wants to transition from a more crude oil based economy to a gas based economy. And why government is wanting to do that? Because it is wanting to increase the use of natural gas in our energy mix, which is currently at about 6% of our total energy requirements. Government wants to increase it to 15% by 2030. And why is natural gas preferred? Because it is less polluting than conventional hydrocarbons like crude oil and coal, and also it is usually cheaper than oil. Further, it is seen as a key transition fuel. Why key transition fuel? Because we can't immediately transition from crude oil to electrification. We need something in between that is less polluting than crude oil and somewhat in towards more less carbon intensive source of fuel. So this is why coal is seen as a more key transition fuel. Similarly, government is also pushing the India's oil and natural gas companies to increase the domestic production of natural gas in a bid to keep imports under check, right? So this is what government is doing in recent times. Now, recently, government also highlighted in 2015 that we want to reduce our reliance on imports of crude oil and natural gas. Government wanted to reduce this to 67% by 2022, but now you understand this has increased to how much? 88%. This government has actually failed to do so. Now, reducing oil imports is one of the fundamental objectives of the government, and government has done something in that direction. It has pushed for electric mobility. Most of the government vehicles these days are electric vehicles. Similarly, electric buses are running in Delhi, and I understand in major metropolitan cities also you'll find the electric buses running. Similarly, government is transitioning to biofuels, that is E20 ethanol or E20 fuels are available, which means 20% of that fuel will consist of ethanol and 80% of that will be blended with petrol. So therefore, use of biofuels reduces your overall need to import crude oil. Similarly, alternative fuels for transportation are also being found out. One of the major alternatives is use of green hydrogen for that. So therefore, the demand of such electric mobility has picked up, but has our dependence on conventional fuel reduced? From our today's discussion, we'll safely say it has not reduced. Now, what is the trend in oil import? This is very important from our exams perspective. Now, reliance in imported oil has been growing continuously over the past few years, except in 2021. Why in 2021 it reduced? Because COVID-19 pandemic and its lockdown was in place during this financial year, and when lockdown was in place, so economic activity was happening less, and therefore demand for crude was etc. Now, India's overall oil dependency, particularly on imports, it has stood at 87.8% in last financial year, 87.4% in this year. It was only less than 85% in the financial year of 2020 and 21, right? So this was less than 83.5% and less than 85% it was in FY 2021. So this year, except this year, after COVID-19 pandemic, India's oil dependency, particularly on imports, has increased. Okay, so please remember this fact. And government wants to reduce India's reliance on imports crude oil, but sluggish domestic oil output in the face of unnecessarily growing the demand for petroleum products has been the biggest impediment, right? Now, what is the impact of import dependence of crude oil? Why India wants to reduce our imports of crude oil? Now, currently India is world's third largest consumer of crude oil, and high import dependency makes Indian economy vulnerable to global price fluctuation. So whenever there is a global disturbances that is happening, some countries are fighting war like Russia, Ukraine, like Israel and Hamas. So whenever that kind of disruptions happen, we see the prices of crude oil increase, and whenever prices of crude oil increase, our country's trade deficit increase. What is trade deficit? Is this the difference between imports and exports? So whenever imports will be higher than exports, that will be called as trade deficit, and whenever imports increase, it widens the trade deficit. Similarly, to finance our imports, what we need to increase the supply of dollars in the domestic market, and what government does is that it uses the foreign exchange rate or foreign exchange reserve to increase the supply of dollars in the market, because we'd want more dollars to import higher commodities, and when the demand for dollars increase in the market, if we don't increase the supply of dollars in the market, it will push the value of our local currency down, and this is harmful for India, especially when we are importing how much, and when the value of rupee decreases, it means our imports become costlier. So for that, government increases the supply of US dollar from our reserves, and also this happens to prevent the rupee from getting depreciated. And whenever there is a increase in prices of crude oil, it also increases the prices of petrol, it also increases the prices of diesel, and whenever this happens, you understand inflation rate in India will increase. So this is the reasons why we want to reduce our dependence on crude oil, okay, or especially for imports. Okay, any doubts up till now? Now let us move to another article. This article appeared in the explain section, and it talks about that first confirmed image of the colossal squid in the deep sea has happened, and why is this significant. Now this article is relevant from science and tech perspective, so let us try to discuss this article. Now in the age of sail, whenever the most amount of sail was happening through the sea, particularly at that time, the sailors were afraid of one thing, that was a mythical squid known as kraken. So it was expected that this kraken, which had a taste of human flesh, it was the sailor's worst nightmare. So as you may have heard, कि बेटा सोजा गब्बर आ जाएगा. Similarly, sailors were afraid that सोजा नहीं तो kraken आ जाएगा. Okay. So jokes apart, now do you know that this idea of kraken was just a product of superstition, or was it a reality? It was not a product of superstition, because it is well known that the description of this kraken was based on sighting of real animals, particularly giant squid as well as colossal squid, which are the largest cephalopods, which are the classes of marine animals which includes octopuses and cuttlefish, and these are possibly the largest invertebrates in the world. So our today's scope of discussion are colossal squid and giant squid, particularly colossal squid because they have been sighted on video for the first time. Now what you have to remember, that despite the size, the deep sea squid, they remain elusive. And why they are elusive? Because until recently, after a century after it was first identified and named, they were first identified and named in 1925, still there is no image of colossal squid in the natural environment. Now this changed last month when a team of scientists on board a research vessel in the southern part of the Atlantic, they recorded a juvenile colossal squid only a foot long and about 2000 feet below the sea surface. This footage was taken near the South Sandwich Island, and it was released for public on April the 15th. Now, why is colossal squid, or why have colossal squid remained an enigma? Now, this cephalopod, it was first discovered in 1925 when a team of scientists found the fragments of this particular squid in a belly of a sperm whale. So, most of our understanding about this creature, it does not come from our own understanding, but from the remains or the dead of this specimen or the squid, which we found in the stomachs of whales and seabirds, and sometimes when younger ones turn up in their trawl nets. So, until last month, humans had not seen the depths of Southern Ocean, which actually is the natural habitats of these colossal cephalopods, particularly giant squid and the colossal squid. Now, colossal squid has been nearly impossible to spot, especially on camera. And it is due to many factors. First of all, it is due to the large and sensitive eyes, which is basically a size of basketball. So this probably makes them away from the research equipment, which can be bright, and also they make noise. So as a result, researchers have a very little idea about the diet of these colossal squids, their lifespan, and also their reproductive traits, which is essential for any animals that exist in the environment. Now, I told you about colossal squid. So what about giant squid, which is another important cephalopods in our today's discussion. Now giant squid also elusive, but more is known about giant squid as compared to the colossal squid. Now, this giant squid was first identified in 1857, whereas colossal squid was first identified in 1925. And a live specimen was captured on camera only in 2004 and on video in 2016. And compared to colossal squid, they were captured on live camera only in 2025. Now, what we understand about giant squid is that they live in a frigid depths of ocean between 600 to 3000 feet below the sea level, and also in tropical and temperate waters. Now they are known to eat deep sea fish and also other species of squid which are smaller in nature. Now what are the differences between giant squid and the colossal squid? Now beyond their habitat, what is the difference between giant squid and colossal squid is the shape and size. Now there are huge exaggeration based on their shapes and size, but what we know we'll discuss today. Now experts believe that the colossal squid can be as long as 7 meters or 23 feet in length and can weigh up to 500 kilograms. Whereas as compared to the colossal squid, the giant squid is longer. They can stretch up to 13 meters or 43 feet. However, in terms of weight, they are lighter as they can weigh up to 275 kilograms. So when it comes to weight or mass, the colossal squid has more weight, but when it comes to length, these giant squid are longer in length. Now colossal squid, they have a huge body but relatively short arms and tentacles, which means their body plan is some ways opposite to the giant squid. Giant squid have larger tentacles and arms, but their overall body mass is less, as we have understood here. On the other hand, colossal squid have smaller tentacles and hands. On the other hand, their mass is higher. Okay, so this is the difference between these two cephalopods. Now what is the benefit that these squids have because of their large size? First, that their massive size increases the number of animals that they can prey on. They can eat much larger fish as compared to other cephalopods, and also their larger size reduces the number of species that can eat them. So once fully grown, only animal that can eat these squids are the sperm whale, which is the largest tooth predator in the world. And also these squids have massive eyes. As I've already told you, their eyes is roughly the size of basketball, which means they can spot their primary adversary, that is the sperm whale, from a much larger distance, therefore allowing them to evade these sperm whales. But unlikely as many other squids, giant and colossal squids, they are likely to take years to mature. As giant squids, they live anywhere between 2 to 12 years, and there is no clear agreement on the average lifespan of the colossal squid because we know very little about them. Now the big question is, why is this sighting in news and why is this significant? The reason is, first of all, as we have a very less idea about this colossal squid because we were not able to spot them. So once we are able to find these images, once we are able to study these images, it will help us understand where these animals spend their lives or spend their time, where they travel to in order to search for food and mating, and also how long they live actually. Now, what is important that the squid that was found is in a size of mid-range, that it is somewhat nascent, only about a foot long. So this will actually give the scientists the opportunity to fill some of the missing puzzle pieces or the void of information that exists about this mysterious animal. And sightings of such colossal squid is very important when it comes to understanding the impact of such processes like deep sea mining, because prima facie we understand deep sea mining has impact on the local flora and fauna of the sea. Similarly, how it impacts squid also will also be able to understand because of this development. Okay. Now, with this, let us try to solve this particular question. Yes, Bhagat Singh, Udan scheme was for that. Udan only has one A. Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik. Well, all of you are correct. First one is right, second one isn't, because unlike the giant squid, colossal squid has smaller arms and tentacles, making them largest cephalopod by weight, not by length. By length, giant squid are the largest. Okay. So, only option A is right, that is option A. Now that the time has run out, we also have one more article to deal with. I'll pick up this article tomorrow. Okay. No problem. I will pick up this tomorrow. So this is all from my side. You can download the notes after the session ends on my Telegram channel, ATS Live. So this is the address of Telegram channel. So those who haven't subscribed to the Telegram channel yet, please use this key to find the Telegram channel and also use this key to get discounts. Okay. So I'll see you again tomorrow.